What I want to talk about today is 5 steps to fraud detection. Next week, I'm interviewing Susan Swinehart for episode 123, themillionairinsider.com/123, where she talks about scams, financial fraud, consumer fraud, and then real-time fraud happening now. So what I want to start with, and the reason I am sharing this is because fraud is becoming so prevalent and is so problematic for many people listening to this, as well as many advisors, clients. If you just look at the statistics, it's beyond comprehension. Total consumer losses in the US was $12.5 billion in 2024. That's a 25% increase year over year, with 38% of those reporting fraud losing money compared to 27% in 2023. It's amazing. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center reported that the total scam and cybercrime losses were $16.6 billion, a 33% increase over 2023. And that's from the Washington Post. The institutions that are feeling the most pressure, 60% are financial institutions and fintech. They reported an increase in fraud in the past year, rising to nearly 70% among enterprise banks. That is beyond my comprehension. 63% of North American financial firms are reporting at least a 6% increase in fraud over the last 12 months. About half of those are stemming from digital channels. Hi, I'm Annette Bau, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. And one of the things that I always tell my clients is that if anything happens that seems suspect or that you're not clear on, you need to contact me, right? And I literally had one of my clients who calls me for everything. And she said, I was just a victim of fraud. Now, it was only $1,500, even though that's $1,500 too much. She had made an international purchase for one of her nieces that lives overseas. She got a call saying, we did not get paid for the transaction you made, and we are going to go after you if you don't pay us. They ended up getting her to purchase gift cards. No one is going to ask you to purchase a gift card. And she ended up paying it. And then she called me, and then she was so embarrassed. It's just one of those things where I'm just seeing it impacting more and more people. So just something to be aware of. I had another client who never pays attention to anything, and he's a co-trustee with another person, and that person and I pay attention to his finances. We were going through his bank statement, and we see a transaction, $200 transaction that just seemed odd. And it was in a town where he hadn't been. So we contacted him. He didn't know about it. His wife didn't know about it. We contacted the company. They didn't get back with us, so we reported it as fraudulent. Well, it turns out the company did call us back. It was a charity, and they had entered the credit card, and it was 1 digit off. And so what ended up happening is they caught it, and they were like, we are so sorry. It would have never been discovered had we not been paying attention to that. So you've got to pay attention to it. All right, surges in specific fraud types. Synthetic identity fraud, where they combine real and fake data to create a fake persona. It has jumped 28% since 2022, making it the fastest growing fraud type. And then scam-related frauds have surged, with institutions reporting a 40% increase in dollar value losses in 2024. That's up from 29% in 2023. And then account takeover. It remains a top threat, with rising incidents in mobile wallets, P2P apps, and crypto platforms. One of my friends from high school, a doctor, had $500,000 in cryptocurrency. He got a virus and he lost it. Now, I just so happened to sit next to probably the foremost crypto expert in the country on my flight to Tennessee. He lives down there and just a funny guy. I thought he was like a singer because he just had the look. And then he's like, I'm a financial guy. I'm like, you're a financial guy? I actually started laughing and I just thought it was so funny. And he's like, he normally doesn't fly first class. He normally flies private. But he goes, I think it's important that my son learn that this is how normal people fly. I thought that was kind of funny. But he said that his company could actually get my friend out of the bind and unlock it. So I connected the two. I'm not sure what happened. But my friends, it's happening everywhere. There's a rising role of AI in fraud where they're using AI like for deep fakes, voice cloning, and even to generate phishing. Now, this is really important. They can actually make somebody's voice sound just like your grandson, your child, your partner, your relative, your friend. So you've got to be so careful. One of the things that most experts recommend is that if you get a call saying your child needs money or your grandchild needs money, is you say, all right, I'm going to call you back. Call them. If they don't answer, text them and say, call me immediately. Don't do anything until you talk to that person. And if they are going to do some type of, say, for instance, they've got your child or something and they're kidnapping them, you're going to hear something different than that. But a lot of these are just saying, I need money, send it here. And you don't talk to the person, you're not talking to any real person. So just be aware of that. And then another one that's called pig butchering scams. And they're a crypto investment fraud with a romantic tactic tied to it. It has rose 40% in 2024, accounting for 33% of the crypto losses. And the total between pig butchering and HYIPs have totaled over 12.4 billion. And I'm going to just give you a little definition of pig butchering right directly here. I went and looked it up. So let me just get to it. Some of these you can't even keep track. There's so many of them. So it's a type of online scam where the victim is encouraged to make increasingly higher financial contributions over a longer period. And a lot of times what it is the person builds a relationship with the victim over time, and it's oftentimes has a romantic or friendship element. They're flattering the person. They basically are just getting that person to trust them. And then what they do is get their money and then they're gone. So again, just be aware of that. A couple other ones, global and online fraud trends. Scam losses hit 1.03 trillion in 2024, with only 4% of the victims recovering losses. Ooh, it's terrible. In the UK alone, 1 billion was stolen in authorized payment fraud in 2024. That's 12 to 14% a year-over-year jump. And then in India, they also saw a cyber fraud quadruple in 2024, with losses of over 20 million from high-value cases. So, my friends, we've got to be aware of it. What does this mean to you? It means that it's getting worse and there's more people being harmed and losing money. They're getting smarter. The digital transformation allows us to be in touch and do everything, but it is dramatically increasing the number of cases of fraud relating to your mobile, relating to crypto channels, and even banking channels. And if you're doing crypto, you've got to be working with somebody who really knows what they're doing. I am not a crypto expert, and it very much concerns me because it's not regulated. Now, people love it because it's not regulated. And it's like, that's the good news, and it's also the bad news. And then AI, that's a double-edged sword. Fraudsters are using it to scale while defenders are deploying AI to detect threats. That, to me, is very concerning. And obviously, do your own research, but I just do not see any good coming from that. And I get, and it's on both sides, they get influenced by somebody they're getting money from or contributions from. And so then they're like, okay, include it. But I do not think that is a good thing for any consumer. And then synthetic scams are leading the rise. They're harder to detect and they're harder to recover from. So you got to be aware of that. And then institutional vulnerability, our banks. Now, granted, if you report it to your bank, most banks, you got to check with yours, will cover you for a certain period of time. And I think mine's either 45 days or 60 days. So you got to be paying attention to your bank statements, your credit card statements, and then reporting it immediately. So what can you do? All right, the first thing, and I agree with this, they say advocate for AI-based detection solutions. That's critical. increased investments in synthetic identity checks and account takeover safeguards, and then educate people on the most threatening and profitable scams like pig butchering and investment fraud. So those are some things that not only you can do, but if you're an advisor, you can help your clients do. So let's talk about 5 essential steps to detect fraud, because I think a lot of times people don't even know where to start. So the first thing is really understanding what is normal behavior, and you got to create that baseline. Now, if you are a trustee or an executor, or you're a power of attorney for your parent or for your sibling or someone else, you want to know what are the baseline of expenses and how does that person spend money. One of the things I'm always concerned about when my clients start to decline cognitively is who's paying attention to this. Are these charges legitimate? And even if they are legitimate, are they being taken advantage of? Because once a person donates to one charity, they get 110 requests. And I have seen so many of my clients who have literally been donating to dozens of different charities. And it's like, wait a minute, you cannot afford to do this. And so again, it's something that's really important to know what normal behavior is, create that baseline, and then make sure whatever they're doing, they can afford it. So what normal looks like to one person may be very different than another, meaning from a standpoint of spending patterns. Now, one of the other things I encourage is that a person really be focused on not using a bunch of different accounts or credit cards. Recently, actually the last couple of years, and it's been people who have a lot of money and people who don't have very much money, I've noticed a trend where people have so many different accounts and so many different credit cards, you don't know what's going on. And the problem is that it's very difficult for somebody, some third party, to come in and look and find out what is going on and are all of these charges legitimate. If you have the charges coming out of either a bank account or a credit card, ideally one of each, it's much easier to see, okay, yes, every month they're paying for Netflix. Every month they're paying this utility bill. Every month they're doing this. And it gives you a chance to really look at those financial vitals to make sure that we know what the baseline is. All right, the next thing is to continually monitor it. This seems to go without saying, and yet I am shocked at how many people don't monitor their checking account, their savings account, their debit card, their credit cards. Fraudsters are getting smarter and they're able to monitor things. They're able to get your data so much easier. And some people just don't make it a regular habit to review their statement. I cannot tell you how many times I have found fraudulent transactions on my accounts. When I was delegating everything to my financial person, and I wasn't going through and really reconciling, meaning when I say reconciling, looking at every transaction and making sure that it is legitimate. And if I don't recognize it, checking with my team, checking with my husband, whatever it may be. And it was fascinating the number of fraudulent transactions I started catching. I mean, thousands of dollars. And I encourage you to not only do that with your accounts, but obviously if you are an advisor or you are a trustee or you're an executor, make sure you're doing it with the people who you're taking care of. You want to consistently monitor all transactions. Credit reports are important too. Not having too many credit cards. You know, having so many credit cards you can't keep track of because like, well, I get points here. Oh, I get free gas here. I get this here. I mean, the complexity and the expense of having all of that and managing all of that is not worth the 2 cents you're saving on gas. So don't let that be you. And then you want to make sure that on a credit report, you don't see credit cards that you don't recognize. One of my sister's friends got a credit report and she's like, I don't have these accounts. Her best friend had taken out credit cards in her name. Oh, cringeworthy. And then you want to make sure that you have double authentication and that it is difficult for people to access your account. Don't make the password too easy. I left a group home yesterday that one of my clients is staying in, and you have to unlock the door. And I go, let me guess. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. And he goes, that's exactly what it is. People just don't think. It's like, that's probably the first number most people would go to. So you got to be aware of that. Now, technology can help, but you got to be aware of it because the problem is it can make it easier for criminals and it can also take time. And it can be hard for some of us that are not experts at technology. And I laugh because I feel I've gotten better, but like I'm nothing compared to my kids. Like if I have an issue, all I have to do is get my youngest son, even really my oldest, but my youngest son to slow down a minute and fix this. And I mean, he just has it fixed. In fact, I was having a computer problem one time. I had Apple on, I had my IT on, and they're both going around and he comes in. And at the time, he was like in his teens. He had it fixed instantly. And the guy goes, I think he needs a job at Apple, but they're just better than we are. And then I had another situation where we use a Microsoft Suite, and I was on with one of the guys and he goes, oh, I don't know, let me Google it. And he's over there Googling it. And I was laughing because I'm like, he goes, that's what I do with most of my things. People call me and all I do is go Google it. He goes, so if you ever have a problem, just go Google it. I thought that was so funny. You got to be aware that fraud happens when you're not looking. And that's why it's so important to have automatic alerts and regular check-ins where you're checking it, not that you're just relying that everything's okay. You know, I get alerts on my credit cards if there's charges above a certain amount, and you got to be paying attention to those. All right, the next thing is to really look for red flags. You know, some common signs that, just to familiarize you, some of these you may say, well, that's obvious, but you know, if it was so obvious, we wouldn't have 1.03 trillion in scams. Any unfamiliar transaction or account access, you want to be paying attention to that. You want to have double authentication so that people cannot get into your accounts. Now, this is really important. When I read the article about Big Balls, who was part of the Doge team, the fact that he had access to our data and he is basically a criminal hacker. I mean, it was unbelievable that I am getting notification of this to one of my neighbors who owns a home outside the country. I got notification of that on Friday. And I am like sending all my financial friends, I'm sending anyone I know. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? Nothing. 4 hours later, I hear from somebody saying, I heard something that I don't know. It was not until Monday I heard it on the news. You guys, that's a long time. So hopefully you know that you need to have your credit report, need to have the credit bureaus locked, and you need to be paying attention to all of that. Now there's been people that have come forth that are whistleblowers saying they have released some of our data. And so the problem is it ends up becoming political, of saying, oh, if you like the current administration, then no, they've done nothing. And if you don't, it has. My friends, this is your money. It's your life. You've got to make sure you're protected. And I don't care who's in the White House or who's in Doge or who's doing what. When there are discussions or there are people making claims that our data might have been breached or our social security numbers, it's not something we can take lightheartedly. We've got to be proactive to make sure we are protected. Sitting around waiting to see if it's a problem is going to be a problem. So just be aware of that and make sure you're doing what you can to protect yourself, regardless of what's going on out there. Now, if you see changes in any billing information, that's important. New accounts that you didn't open up, that's especially important on a credit report. Like my sister's friend who found that out on a credit report going, I don't have these credit cards. And then you got to be really careful whenever you get an email or a phone call that you're not releasing personal information. If the IRS has an issue with you, they are going to send it to you in the mail. They're not going to text you. They're not going to call you. They're not going to email you. And I think a lot of people get in a pickle because they get freaked out. Their primal brain, child brain, toddler brain goes berserk and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to go to jail. Oh my gosh, what happened? And you got to remain calm. And if you can't remain calm, you got to call your advisor, your CPA, your attorney, or a trusted friend, somebody that's reasonable and rational and can walk you off the cliff and make sure it's legitimate. And then number 4, you want to act quickly. If you detect fraud, speed is essential. You've got to contact your financial institution. In fact, most of them have a certain amount of time you have to notify them. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that the accounts that have been compromised are locked down and that the report has been filed with the appropriate authorities as well as the credit bureaus, and make sure that your credit bureau is frozen. Now, I had gone to the different bureaus and frozen mine, and it was a nightmare because Experian, who is the largest, didn't send me a 4-digit PIN. So to get it unlocked, I literally had to FedEx them an address, my driver's license, all this stuff. And now I just use a third party. I use Aura. And I'm not saying they're better. I got a good discount rate, but it's going to obviously go up. But I looked at different ones. I looked at reviews, and that's why I chose them. Obviously, if you're going to use one, make sure and go and do your own due diligence. But it's nice. I can go right into the app and I can toggle over to turn on my credit report or turn off it. So if you have a need for a credit bureau to report your credit score, then you want to be able to do that. Because I'm a financial advisor, different companies want to check my credit score now and then. And so if somebody needs to, all I have to do is go in there and click it off. And it was funny because I didn't even know what my credit score is. It's actually the one goes, that's really high. So it's all relative, right? But it was funny because my credit score used to not be as high because I don't really do debt. I have credit cards, but I pay them off, but I don't have like any loans or mortgages. That actually hurts you, but it's still in a good amounts in the 800. So she said it was good. So I'm like, okay, I think above an 800 is probably pretty good. But just like health issues, the sooner you catch a financial fraud, the better the outcome. So you got to notify them as quickly as possible. Now, I had a scenario years ago where somebody stole one of my checks. And the only commonality among the check that was stolen and the person's identity that was stolen that they said they were was my paycheck company, which I thought was really interesting. We never were able to determine who did it. But what was crazy is I noticed a fraudulent check like immediately. I contacted them. They're like, thanks. And I'm like, are you going to notify the credit bureaus? Oh, yeah, a department will do that. I'm like, when? I mean, they had taken $1,000, so $1,000. By the time the bank reported it, they had stolen $27,000. Now, I was made whole, but I was livid. I mean, this is Bank of America. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, we planned for this. I'm like, why wouldn't you have just gone and immediately notified the bureau? So when they went into Target, they went into Walmart, they went into Home Depot, they went into this baby stores. They literally went over to California and all up the coast, and they didn't catch them until they were like literally up in Northern California. And it was like $27,000. And I thought, that's why all of our fees are so high and insurance is so high, is because people are getting away with it. So you got to be really careful, and you want to make sure you're on the ball so that you're limiting the damage and you can do what you can to get your money back. All right, number 5, you want to build a prevention plan. Now, this is what I refer to as kind of like your financial security system. Most people understand that, when they create their retirement plan, they want to have peace of mind. They want to have a plan for longevity. Well, fraud prevention is basically protecting your wealth from a different angle. You want to be using two-factor authentication. That's really important. Really strong passwords. When I got this third-party app, I found out that my husband, who had the weakest password that ever was, that you should never have, had been literally on the dark web for a long time. Now, fortunately, we didn't have any fraud. And fortunately, because I demanded he change it, he changed it years ago. But it was like literally the easiest password to ever figure out. You don't want to be using your name, your birthday, your spouse's name, their birthday. Those are just like give-me's. You want to put a freeze on your credit, especially if you think you've been subject to fraud, but ideally before. And then you want to make sure and educate your loved ones, especially aging parents, children who aren't capable of yet managing their money or need help managing it, as well as just common scams, so that they know what to watch for and you're aware of what's going on. So now, if you've been a victim of fraud, what can you do? The first thing is secure your accounts immediately. Contact your banks, your credit unions, your financial institutions. Ideally, you have your credit already frozen, but make sure that you freeze the accounts and that you've got that two-factor authentication, so you won't even have a compromised account in the first place. Report the fraud to authorities. You can go to the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, or you can go to identitytheft.gov. You can report it to your local police department. Now, they may or may not assist you. If not, they may tell you where to report it, and then make sure and get into those credit bureaus and report it, and also freeze your credit and place a fraud alert on those bureaus. You want to document everything. You want to write down what happened, when did it occur, what accounts or information were affected, who did you speak with. Get their first and last name, and then the time you spoke to them and what they said. And you want to keep all records, emails, letters, screenshots. the records you keep and the information you have is going to be invaluable for the investigation and or insurance claim if you have one. Next thing, you want to check your credit reports. You can get a free credit report from the different 3 bureaus. And I think you can just search online for free credit report or annual credit report, and you'll be able to see it. But what you want to watch for are new accounts that you don't remember opening or that you didn't open, credit inquiries you didn't authorize, and then any type of address change or unfamiliar employers. Just be aware of that. When you monitor your credit, you're able to see what's going on there and do a deeper dive to make sure you haven't been a victim of fraud. And then last but not least, take preventative measures so you get ahead of it before it occurs. We've talked about freezing your credit. That's critical. Setting up transaction alerts. That's also important. Using identity theft protection services, a third party, and then educating yourself and your family on common scams and what to watch for. This is especially important with kids and children. So there you have it. Now, I know we've gone over a lot here, and I'm just going to kind of really quickly recap. But the first thing is, the bottom line, my friends, is that the statistics on financial fraud and scams is off the charts. And if you haven't been a victim, you are going to likely be one. The 5 different essential steps to detect it. Number 1, understand what baseline is. What's normal behavior? Especially if you're somebody that is assisting that person, be it a financial advisor, a trustee, or even a power of attorney. Monitor continually. Watch for red flags. Act quickly. And then create a prevention plan. And then you want to make sure that if you have been a victim, you secure those accounts immediately. You report the fraud to authorities. You document everything, including who you spoke to, what they said, what your follow-up was, everything. Check your credit reports regularly and then take preventative measures. There you have it. I know this was a little different for some of you guys as far as advisors go, but hopefully you see how critical this is. We are seeing more and more clients subject to attempts of fraud and, unfortunately, actual cases of fraud. Next week, I am interviewing Susan Swinehart. One of her clients literally was a retired teacher, 80 years old. She ended up getting swindled out of over $30,000 because she was afraid. They were saying that she had been embezzling money and that if she didn't pay them off, they were going to go public and they were going to destroy her. And she literally took $30,000, put it in like a towel in a box and mailed it off to them. I mean, like, you've got to go, what? But the problem is they go after these people who are vulnerable, who are afraid, who don't know what's going on. I have clients right now that we brought in co-trustees because I'm very concerned that cognitively they would not know if they were scammed. And we have heightened scrutiny on their accounts just to make sure that they're going to be okay. You've got to be aware that fraud happens to almost everyone. And if you haven't had an attempt on you or even fallen prey of it, just consider yourself really lucky. By following these steps and really being aware of what's going on and the current fraud, the current financial fraud that's happening, as well as ways in which to detect it and then protect yourself, in my opinion, is the key. So I really encourage you to pay attention and really do the due diligence of what you need to do so that you're not a victim. So there you have it. Now, I really encourage you, if you haven't been a victim of fraud, you're lucky. I mean, the vast majority of us either have been or have had attempts made. And so what I want you to leave with is that you can take control of this. You can protect your financial future and you can turn what could be a crisis or even a potential crisis more into a turning point to where you are prepared and you don't fall victim to these scammers. And I really encourage you to go back and listen to this, take notes of it, identify a person who can be there to help you if something happens. I mean, as I was recording the episode with Susan, I share it. I got a scam literally as I was recording it, telling me that the Arizona State Department of Motor Vehicles is going to basically come and take my license because I hadn't paid a ticket. And then the person that sent it was from like a Outlook account. No, it was what account was it? It was from a Hotmail account. Oh, really? It was like real-time scam attempt. All right, you guys make it great. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm Annette Ba'u. All international copyrights are reserved. If you love the content of this podcast, please follow and subscribe to our channel so you get notified of episodes, and also give us a 5-star review and share a comment. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on taking another step to create a financially free life you love. If you're not sure about your financial future or that it's in order, or you are ready to stop worrying about money, or possibly the fear of becoming a bag lady, ending up broke in retirement, or you simply are ready to know your financial house is in order so that you can have a bright financial future, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. And that doesn't stand for non-sufficient funds. It stands for Next Step Finance. It's the next best step of what you need to do so you can avoid an NSF notice in your future. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. The number of women who were not broke or poor while working or married is staggering. The entire mission of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast is to ensure you have the information for you, your family, your friends, anyone who's willing to listen to it and apply it so that you can create a financially free life you love. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Until our next episode, take one action that will help you create a financially free life you love. I'm Annette Ba'u, your host. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.